Hello and welcome to Reinfused. This is the third part of our MSX history series. This is the last part of it. It's going to be covering what was really the last final actual generation of the MSX and a little bit of the one that kind of came halfway between just before it. I will be reading this off of a very long script, long for me, and it will be mostly to camera. So yeah, I will have to look down at my script. So yeah, sorry for that. So there will certainly be a lot of jump cuts as well. Apologies in advance for all of that. But anyway, let's get into it. In the second part of the MSX history, we looked at the MSX2 standard, a slight bump on the original specification. If you haven't seen either of our videos on the MSX1 or the MSX2, there's at least a 50-50 chance I'll have included some kind of link in the video. If not, you just look for them on our channel. Now, there are just two mainstream generations of the MSX left. We're only really going to concentrate on the Turbo R. The reason being the MSX2 Plus, the other missing generation, is really just a kind of another bump on the MSX2. Plus, I don't own one. I do like covering machines that I actually own. Maybe we'll do, we'll certainly do, if I manage to finally get one at some point, we'll certainly do a video on that machine, so we'll probably cover a lot of the bits in there anyway. But we do talk about it a little bit. So, after the release of the MSX2 specification, the ASCII Corporation, on its own now because Microsoft had kind of bowed out of it at this point, and its partners started to plan for the MSX3. This was a smaller group of partners. Again, Microsoft had gone. Because after the relatively lukewarm reception of the MSX2, certainly compared to how popular the MSX1 was, and a few other factors, then we'd seen kind of a bit of a narrowing of that group of people that were making machines and having input on the specification. But the plan for the MSX3 would see the specification finally move away from its roots, the Z80 processor, slightly getting a little bit old in the tooth at this point. Still amazing though, obviously. And it would use a much more advanced VDP designed by Yamaha. Yamaha, of course, being a fairly key partner in the whole of the MSX experience. But these plans would take a far longer time than the group would have liked, and so they decided to release a bit of a half step in the shape of the MSX2 in 1988, 3 years after the release of the MSX2 specification. The specification built on the MSX2 by improving mostly video capabilities. It kind of really ratified the RGB port, which had been present for a lot of the machines anyway. The improved VDP, whilst not a massive advancement like the one that was planned for the MSX3, did add some really nice features such as hardware scrolling. Only 3 manufacturers in the end would create mainline systems, and they would be officially released only in Japan, ASCII having kind of walked away from the European market quite a bit at this point. Sanyo and Panasonic would create 3 different machines each, and Sony would end up creating another 2. The uptake wasn't good, and there was very little software specifically designed for the MSX2 Plus specification, although there were some MSX2 games that if they detected the updated machine, they would take advantage of some of those features. Again, mostly that hardware scrolling, which was only several 8-bit machines have proved how powerful that was, especially for games. But this MSX2 Plus release had shown that the time was basically limited for the platform. People were moving on to IBM PC-based systems and other machines, and this kind of 8-bit holdover was really not pulling in the money like it used to. And so, because of this, with Yamaha's VDP still quite a way off for release, the group decided they couldn't wait for it and they would release the final specification of the MSX before that was available. But without all of the new features that the group had planned, they didn't feel they could call this the MSX3, kind of suggesting they were planning to release an MSX3 at some point. So instead, this one was named the Turbo R. The Turbo R, even without all of the features planned for the MSX3 platform, was still a massive change to that original specification, easily the largest change since the beginning. The main processor was now an R800, which was a RISC-based processor, which is where the R comes from in the Turbo R name. There was still a Z80 in there. The MSX engine, if you will, had a Z80, and it could be switched on kind of at will by the machine. So you could use it for backwards compatibility for software that would not work too well on this R800 processor. The Turbo R was still a fantastically powerful computer, even in this kind of restricted version. It boasted a 16-bit processor in RISC-based CPU. It also boasted improved sound, and it could address far more memory, inherently address far more memory. And it was much easier to upgrade as well, which we'll be showing actually the machine we've got. We will be updating that in a future video, and you see how easy it is to upgrade it. But the market was pretty much long gone by the time the Turbo R was released in 1991, and only Panasonic ended up releasing home computers based on the specification. There were also some computers designed for industry by Takaoka, I think it is. Apologies if I got that bad. Very little software was designed for the Turbo R, but software capable of running in that RISC mode would benefit from increased performance, and loads of extra memory is always helpful in a computer. But for all the advancements that the Turbo R brought, there are also some things that were taken away. And I think possibly the saddest of these is the cassette interface. So whilst apparently you could add a cassette interface because of some timing issues, it required a lot more hardware to get it working properly, so it just didn't have it anymore, which is a real shame. It's a giant bit of legacy that's taken away. But I mean, the Turbo R machines also inherently had floppy drive interfaces in them, so I guess cassette was long dead as well. So it's understandable why they wouldn't bother to put that many resources into trying to get tapes working. Finally, at the end of this, Panasonic, the last great holdout to the MSX standard, decided to call it a day. They just felt that there was nowhere really to go with the MSX, and whilst people were playing games, they were playing them on home consoles now, and it wanted a bit of that market, so it decided to concentrate on what it felt was going to be a much more successful line of systems, and it would push those resources into its 3DO system. Well, that Yamaha VDP, by the way, did turn up eventually. It had all of the MSX backwards compatibility stuff removed for. I know it'd be interesting for it to have been in there, but anyway, for fairly obvious reasons, it had all that stuff removed, and it was stuck onto a PC graphics card and renamed the V9990E VDP3, which just rolls off the tongue. So it would have been kind of interesting if they kept those backward modes in there. I wonder if they'd been able to do some kind of emulation layer if they'd had that on PCs. Possibly wouldn't have been that useful, but an interesting idea all the same. The MSX line was effectively over, outside of a few more industrial units and some clones as well, especially in Korea. But it was a range that had lasted 10 years. It had been phenomenally successful in Japan and at least somewhat successful outside of it, especially in Europe. It had spawned multiple IPs, including Metal Gear Solid, and resulted in an unbelievable array of computers, ranging from the dull workman-like machines to really incredibly eye-catching designs, especially some of the ones from Sony, like an old red one I used to use, which somebody purchased off me, but it was a beautiful machine. As a collector of retro computers, the MSX on its own offers such a huge spectrum of machines to buy that you could effectively just concentrate on those and still have a very happy and long collecting life. In fact, if you just concentrated on the MSX1, you would probably have a very long and active collecting life just getting those machines. And if you add that, the increasing rarity of the MSX2, the MSX2 Plus, and the Turbo R machines, you've got all of the challenge of collecting those things as well. Turbo R machines especially, I've been after one for years. I finally got one recently. But they're just, they were just, it's an ever decreasing slope of success. And so as you get down the other end, there are less of those machines out there because less were shipped, less were made. So the MSX2 Plus and Turbo R machines are hard machines to get. As I said at the beginning, still haven't got a 2 Plus machine yet. I still am trying to get one, but they're going for slightly crazy price at the moment. Although I did just recently miss out on one by 10 quid. It went for £65, which was quite annoying. Although obviously whoever bid for that, they may have had hundreds of pounds on it at the end, but still annoying that it went as cheap as that and I didn't get it. Anyway, that's enough of me babbling. I do genuinely love the MSX retro computers, as I think I've probably shown. And it is genuinely a machine that I think almost anyone can start collecting. I mean, they're not cheap. in a lot of parts of the world. The cheapest ones you can get are certainly from Japan. Then you have to factor in all of the transport costs and all that, but you can still get fairly cheap ones for. I recently picked up a machine, a Canon V10 for 20 quid. With the delivery and stuff, which is hard to say because it came with a bunch of other things, but with delivery, it probably went up to 50, 60 quid, but it still was an effectively cheap machine. It's broken and I've got to fix it, but that's retro computer collecting for you. That happens all the time. But you can get machines in Europe. You can, if you're very, very lucky, get machines in America. They did come out. And almost all over the world you can find them. So, yeah, no, there are a range of machines that have got such a massive history. That has such a cultural impact in their home country in Japan. And at least some impact, like the Netherlands, especially in Europe, they were very popular machines there. So yeah, it's a fantastic piece of retro history and machines that I genuinely feel everyone should at least experience slightly, even if it's just in emulation. Because once you get outside of the hacky cheap ports that were made, especially in the UK and Spain, where they would just take the Spectrum code and just kind of slam it on and without any care and attention. Once you get to the machines that were based, the games that were based on cartridge and made in Japan, where actual care and attention was used, and they used the abilities of the actual hardware, then there are some fantastic titles out there and well worth taking a look at. I don't think I'd bother with the there's weird like almost MSX minis that have been made by a company, but they're very expensive for what they are. I imagine just you playing them on the Mister cores would be just as good, and they work out cheaper than buying this kind of single use device. So you may as well just go for one of those if anything else. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough wittering from me. I am going to be following this up probably next week, maybe the week after, with work where I'll actually look at the Turbo R machine that I got, and we will be upgrading the memory as well. Well, hopefully. It's relatively simple, but it can very much go. These things can always go wrong. But anyway, thanks for watching and getting through this very fact-heavy video. If you like the video, please hit like. If you really like the video, please hit subscribe. If you didn't like the video or you have something else to say, then please leave it in the comments below. Also share. Don't forget to share, please. It really helps out the channel. If you want to, you can join our Patreon or our channel membership, and you'll get access to videos early and also a load of exclusive ones as well. And or the bell icon. Yeah, the bell icon somewhere down here, which will tell you when we release a new video, because just being subscribed is not enough, apparently. Yeah. See you next time.
The present is horrible. The future looks bleak. Remember our childhood to get us through the week. We're getting re-enthused. Back to the past and the things we used. We all know that our pasts were great, escaping the things that today we hate. Getting re-enthused. Getting re-enthused. Getting re-enthused. Getting re-enthused.